Good morning and a very warm welcome to Newsline, live from the Newsfirst studios right here in Dawson Street in Colombo. And joining me, in the absence of Bangla Jaisekar, who's taking a short break, is the editor of the news editor of the Island newspaper, Mr. Shamindra Ferdinando. Good morning, Shamindra.
Good morning to you.
And how are you?
Fine.
And we are also delighted to have with us the CEO of the NDB Bank, Mr. Rajendran Thiagaraja. Good morning, Mr.
Morning for us.
And how are you?
Fine, thank you.
And how is the world treating the banking industry in Sri Lanka?
I think with the due respect it deserves.
Right.
And I think the industry is continuing to playing its meaningful role in the growth of the country. And we are privileged to be a part of it.
Good. We'll just touch on this thing. We have a British member of Parliament who says that the crash over the desert in Egypt was most likely caused by a bomb. It's shocking that innocent people have to continue to endure these dangerous matters, and we hope that people will get to the bottom of this. In the meantime, back to Sri Lanka, where we've had lots of consternation in Parliament. First of all, we have this statement from the dear Prime Minister about EPF and ETF to become a new retirement fund. How good is that, Mr. Thiagaraja?
What I believe has been attempted is to consolidate two pools of funds, which are the subscriptions and long-term savings of the common worker in Sri Lanka, hopefully under a set of professional management and with a new framework of governance, so that there is due accountability and very importantly the performance against set targets could be monitored and perhaps made accountable to the public as well as those who effectively own these pools of funds, which are the employees themselves.
Do you think it's essential, or rather, how essential is it to have people who know what they're doing on this, to run this fund, rather than, as opposed to friends of whoever?
See, we're not talking about significant amounts of money, which are also very granular and hard-earned savings, long-term savings of ordinary employees, representing thousands of establishments, mainly the small and medium-term establishments. So I guess there is a great degree of expectation that those who are responsible with managing these funds, are suitably qualified, and secondly, that management is taken place within an overall frame of proper governance, so that there is proper transparency, accountability and acceptability of the way in which these monies are managed.
So, in short, it's essential to have people who know what they're doing.
Of course.
They must know. Otherwise, we may have a situation where the investments are gone here, there and everywhere.
The point here is, I think EPF and ETF represents long-term investments of granular savings. So I believe that it is a different challenge than managing short-term money for short-term returns. So a careful a set of skill sets are needed to look at it from that perspective and continue to keep focus on the long-term objectives of the fund itself.
A thought has just occurred to me when you articulate this so well, Mr. Thiagaraja. Were you approached to be the governor of the central bank?
No. I have no such aspirations, nor do I think that I am in that league.
Really? And what is that league?
I am quite happy to focus on my current mandate, which is to lead the National Development Bank to its next phase of growth.
Let's see. Let's take this on a little bit to Shavindra here. There was a lot of consternation that the ETF funds were invested incorrectly, or for want of a better word, in dodgy shares, which weren't really giving a proper return. I think we had Dr. Harsha De Silva being very vocal about this at one point in time. I think this is all to address all those issues now.
I'm not really sure, but I want to tell you that the previous government attempted a similar operation, and it caused a huge controversy, and finally it led to the police shooting a person dead at Katunayaka.
That young boy.
Yes.
Indeed.
So that killing by the police was used by the then opposition, the UNP, the JVP and other political parties and groups and the civil society to against the former president. So obviously this government is planning the same project. So I think, as Mr. Thiagaraja stressed, they should ensure transparency, accountability, and ensure that the ordinary people's funds are not wasted or squandered, because our politicians have a habit to play around with other people's funds.
OPM.
Yeah.
Other
Because
people's money.
If you go through reports made by the COPE and the PAC, the parliamentary committees, watchdog committees, you will realize our politicians over the years, both governments, both SLFP, the UPFA and the UMP, they have squandered millions and billions of rupees.
Would it be fair to say, in your opinion, that the EPF and ETF were raped?
Certainly. Not only that, I mean, if you just go through those reports, you will realize they have taken out funds, they have transferred funds are missing. You see the recent, the ongoing controversy over Avantgarde. It's an example. A section of the government believes Major Nisanka Senadipati did nothing wrong. A section of the government, the justice minister, the law minister, whereas the others in the same Jahapalana government believe otherwise. So there's controversy. So for me, I don't see a big difference between the two major political parties.
And Mr. Thiagaraja, how we have this, recently the Speaker signed 6 different acts, including the special one-off, what I call retrospective taxes. How do you find the money after you've paid your shareholders and all sorts of things, and then you're suddenly hit with this one-off tax?
For us, from our point of view, this conversation of what we call super gains tax originated, I believe, somewhere last year, towards the middle of last year. So even though the bill may have crystallized this year, as a responsible, a larger institution, we took the precaution of quantifying the potential impact of this. And if you actually go through our December financial statements, we even made a note to the accounts of a possible liability.
So this was before the presidential election?
Yes, in December, if you really look at the accounts. So even though there was no provision in the profit and loss account, we quantified the potential impact of it. So from what we believe, now that it has crystallized, it is not going to be a direct hit to the profit and loss account of the institution for this year, but it would be set off against the reserves of the respective institutions. And from our point of view, it's been paid now. So it's not really a shock as at November 2016.
I see.
At best, we would have expected, if there was a reversal, a credit to what we had thought of.
Oh, I see. So y'all are not too, as a bank, you're not unduly concerned?
As a bank, our responsibility is, as part of the business, to be mindful of applicable current legislation and to comply and operate within that. So if there is a legislated tax, our responsibility is to comply. The articulation and public debate is a separate matter.
Is this a good financial policy to wake up one morning and pass a retrospective tax?
I'm not going to put myself into the shoes of the person who crafted the tax, but from publicly available information, the rationale for this appears to be that the regime had inherited a set of challenges, and to normalize it, that there is a one-off adjustment needed, and this is one tool being used to normalize that. So just if I may, and I'm not here to promote this or not, but if I give you a couple of examples where citizens have been called to do similar things. I believe in the mid-90s, in the Asian financial crisis, at least one nation, South Korea, the common citizen was called upon to protect the country's reserves, and I think even the ordinary citizens reposited some of their gold jewelry in the reserve bank to boost the reserves. And I
well,
believe
that's transparency for you, that the government said that openly. There's one school of thought, Shamindra, that this tax, this one-off tax, when seen as a whole with this mansion tax and all these other one-offs, that it is nothing more than a tax that is aimed or was aimed or is aimed at people who did not support the efforts of the new government, i.e. that this was designed to, for want of a better word and a typical Sri Lankan term, to hammer the Rajapaksa supporters. Is that true?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
No.
I'm not an expert on these taxes, but I don't think so. Because, as I mentioned earlier, you take this huge controversy over this avant-garde. It's obvious. I mean, they are not, targeting all the friends of Rajapaksa.
Yes.
Yeah, they are protecting, or shielding, whatever you say.
Yes, in terms of avant-garde, there's a bit of protection going on. On that note, I'm going to time to hopefully earn a bit of money. So we're going to take a break. Do stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Newsline, live from Dawson Street in Colombo with Shamindra Ferdinando from the island and Mr. Tyagaraja from NDB. I want to ask you this, Mr. Tyagaraja, because I want to understand this. How possible is it to reverse the 30-year Treasury bond, if there was a need to?
to reverse.
Yes, or to cancel it. How possible is it?
Well, from my limited knowledge, for us, once an instrument is issued and made available to the public, I don't think one can withdraw it because it's a public instrument.
I see. I see. Aren't there any similarities with the Finance and National Savings Bank issue when the then Treasury Secretary had that transaction annulled and reversed?
That was not a treasury bond,
yes,
but that was, I believe, an equity transaction.
Yeah.
And I believe, again, I'm not privy to details, but the reversal was perhaps that the fact that the Treasury Secretary had enough information before him to take an informed decision that the transaction warranted a certain view in terms of counterparty settlement.
I see.
But I don't think you can compare that with a bond.
Right. But in this, perhaps it's in this world, if you can do anything, if there's a will and there's a way, I would be delighted if the dear Prime Minister did a number of things. First of all, he could reverse the bond. 2, he could get his money back, the government's, the people's money from Avantgarde, and ensure that Avantgarde pay all the monies that are due to this government, to the people. And as far as the highway robberies, perhaps the dear Prime Minister can explain why 30 billion rupee saving has now come down to 9 billion, 9.1. Shamendra, why is that? This highway business. The Prime Minister told us that he'd saved 30 billion rupees. They then awarded the same contract to the same contractor, and well, they changed the scope of work, and so they made a 30 billion saving. We were almost delighted, but now we find that it's once again we've been misled, because this 30 billion has become 9 billion, lower.
So maybe the allegations made against the previous government by the then opposition were wrong. Were wrong because
Clearly they were.
Yeah, because you take this case again, the Honorable Minister Tilak Marpal, he alleged that the police hooked up a case against Senadipati to appease their masters, right? So the Justice Minister Vijaydas Rajapaksa says that he prevented the police from arresting the former Secretary of Defence. So similarly, some of the allegations, most of the allegations maybe made by the former opposition against the former President Rajapaksa's government were baseless.
I think, Shavendra, that we saw the Prime Minister intervene in the matter of Vimal Veeravance's passport and some issue at the airport, and now we have this a statement from Vijaydas Rajapaksa in Parliament yesterday that he had to intervene and prevent the arrest of the former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa. It appears to me that this country is run on influence.
Obviously, every sector. I mean, you see, if you take diplomatic appointments, right? You take other private sector appointments. So you have to be somebody to get an appointment. I mean, the previous government proved it, and this government is doing it. You take the appointments made within the past couple of months after this government came into power, and obviously certain people, certain political parties, they have a right, that they are acting as if they have a right to obtain certain facilities, perks, privileges. So it's not only the politicians, those who are in parliament, their families, their friends, their associates, those who are connected to them, stand to benefit at the expense of the people, those who are struggling to make ends meet.
I've got a message from a viewer, and this is clearly for you. It says here, are we not going towards a financial crisis? If so, who is responsible?
My personal belief is that we are not going towards a financial crisis, and I think we have, as a country, faced worse challenges in the past maybe 10-15 years when the country was facing a civil internal conflict. I think, in fairness, there has been a regime change, and there has been public announcement of a clear shift in the financial matrix, and it's maybe worth picking on 2 or 3 elements which differentiate what happened in the last 5 years. I think, rightly or wrongly, and I don't think we can fault those who did it for the last 5 years, after the internal conflict ended in 2009, the major deliverable for the last 5 years was an infrastructure-led growth in the country, and I think we have to thank those who did it for crisscrossing and connecting the country with connectivity. But that was led by debt. And I think there has been a realization, and I think what has been spelled out in the last few months is that the sustenance of that is questioned. As a result, the current government appears to want to take the next phase of our development on a couple of pillars. The first is an FDI, or a foreign direct investment based funding mode, and secondly a very conscious diversification of our export base, not only from a product centricity but also from a market centricity. And one of the key things there is to reduce the reliance on EU and the US, and also perhaps look at the large opportunity in ASEAN. And I believe it's still early days, but if the right capacity is built, as has been articulated even in the yesterday's statement, hopefully there are things to look forward to. But I think the key challenge here for us is the difference between a concept and execution, and public accountability of the actions taken. So regular, honest feedback to the common citizen in terms of the each steps taken in the short and medium and the long term by the government is, I think, is absolutely important to earn the confidence of the common man, be it a common worker or a serious investor.
And Mr. Jagaraja, what about this $10 billion debt that is hanging over us?
So you see, again, as has been articulated by various financial experts, the absolute quantum of a debt is very relative in terms of the total pool of wealth of a nation. If this 10 billion was prevalent 20 years ago, when the country's total wealth was perhaps 10 billion, then it would have been a total different picture, as opposed to looking at a 10 billion debt against perhaps a 60 or 70 billion pool of wealth of a nation. So it's a very relative thing. As long as that percentage of foreign debt to the total domestic product or the wealth of the country is either constant or is gradually reducing, then certainly things are in the right direction.
I've got another one here, and unfortunately it's for you again. This is from apparently a young chap, because it says here, additionally, he's got another question earlier, but additionally, how are any of these policies helping the young upcoming entrepreneurs who do not have their parents' money to spend of this country? We don't have jobs, nor has a single MP paid any attention to the many graduates in the country who do not have jobs.
I think there are a couple of things from a policy perspective which hopefully should help. The first thing, I think, is the triple E policy framework spelled out by the current Prime Minister, which is the economy, employment and education. So from a youth perspective, be it a high school kid or a newly passed out school leaver, the vocational and academic curriculums hopefully would now be focused more on employability, which is again connected to economic development. So hopefully that policy may not show results today, but in the right direction. And secondly, in specific sectors, I think there has been an open policy to connect Sri Lanka's small and medium economic pool for better access to global markets. And I think that's an absolute important thing, because protectionism alone is not going to help young entrepreneurs. The only thing, or the main thing the country can do, is to give access to, in addition to money, access to markets. So when a young entrepreneur builds an innovation or develops something, whether it's agriculture, garments or whatever it is, however smart he is and however money you throw out, if he or she doesn't have the right market to push that product, it's for futility. So I think this government's, at least what was being spelled out, that a concerted effort to connect Sri Lanka to better access to global markets, I think again is a welcome policy direction for the youth to look forward to.
Excellent. It's actually very nice to see a senior banker express so much of confidence, as that actually makes me happy, and I'm sure it rejuvenates all those who are a bit down in the dumps. So your confidence is encouraging. But I want to ask this question from you, Shamindra, because have you got any news about the missing former Sri Lankan Airlines chairman?
I think he's overseas.
Yes, it's supposed to be in Australia.
Yes. So he will come back.
He will.
He will. And finally, the Presidential Commission inquiring into his conduct when he was the chairman at Sri Lankan Airlines, he too will find that there's nothing against him. The way the things are happening. I just want to tell you one thing. If I add something to you, what you said, today the farmers are struggling to sell them, to find markets for their produce. So the government has failed to address that issue. And it's a huge issue. So I think before we globally trying to find markets for our products overseas, I think the ordinary people should they should be able to sell their produce.
Excellent. I've just got a few seconds left, and very quickly, one more question for you. Should there be a reform of the taxation system?
I think that is a continuum for us. It's not a end game to say we reform it completely today. As a nation and the economy evolves continuously, this should be something on top of the agenda, a continuous review.
Thank you. And on that note, thank you very much, Mr. Shamindra Ferdinando from the Island newspaper for joining us this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Thiagaraja from NDB, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Your office is not far from here, is it? Thank you very much for being on the show. The mind is everything what you think you become. And on those, with those words, I wish you a very good morning and have a great weekend. Take care.